All right, guys, welcome back. We're on episode 7 of the Speed Up and Get Your Hits podcast. And sorry, it has been a couple weeks, but once again, the three of us have been all over the place doing all the things, and so we're making time when we can to get back together and throw another one of these episodes together. Tonight, I will give you guys a warning right off the bat. It's going to be a bit of a USPSA episode for the beginning. I didn't want, when we started this podcast, to make it and still don't a USPSA only podcast for only folks that are interested in all the nerdy stuff, deep in the weeds on competition shooting, can listen to this thing and be interested. I mainly want it to be about getting better at shooting, but as we have discussed already, we feel that competition is a big way to do that, and some interesting things are going on in the USPSA world that we're going to kind of talk about. And so just a heads up, if you give a crap about that, you might find it interesting. If not, you can skip towards the kind of the stuff at the end, this week in shooting and different questions and so on and so forth. But we'll dive into it. So for those of you that are on the gram at all, you probably know some of the drama that's been going on with various divisions, and there's constantly stuff like that going on in USPSA discussion on what we can do to make things better and how to fix things, improve things, and that's because we there's a lot of folks that actually care about this thing, right? And so we're always trying to make things better, and we get passionate about it, and so on and so forth. But I think a lot of these discussions about super specific things, whether it's production 15 or single action only, carry optics, or whatever it is, lack context because different people want different things out of the organization. Right? What do we even want this? What's our goals for USPSA? Which we want this thing to look like? It's kind of like having a discussion with somebody about gun control, right? when you have two people and one person tends to believe that the government is the solution to all your problems, and just wants them to control and fix everything, and you got someone else that tends to want to like the government to leave them alone and just live their own life, right? Those two people are not going to agree on gun control because their debate's not about gun control, right? It's about worldview, right? And so USPSA is kind of some of the debates we have is kind of the same way. So I thought it'd be interesting for the three of us to kind of talk about the org a little bit and kind of the goals and things, places that we would like to see things go. I know a lot of the folks that listen to this are going to be voting for area directors and presidents and different things like that coming up pretty soon. So I thought it would be an interesting discussion for us to have. I guess I'll start off with this idea, and I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on it, right? So there's another organization, if you will, in the shooting sports called 3Gun, and it is just significantly less organized as a sport than USPSA is, right? There's a lot of people that love to shoot it, and it's a lot of fun, but pretty much you don't know what the rules are until you show up a lot of times. And so, but the bottom line is it works pretty well. If a range or a match wants to hold a 3-gun match, they can do it, and people will show up and shoot it, and they'll have a great time, and they'll compete at a high level, and it's a lot of fun, and there's less restrictions on what match directors and ranges and stuff can do, so it opens it up possibly to more folks, and there's a lot of good things with that system. The problem that I see with basically having no org, right, is that it restricts your ability to promote super, super high level competition, if you will, at kind of a national and even especially on the world stage, right? How do we push the greatest competitors from around the world to come together and really push each other at an event that actually means something like USPSA Nationals, that's an example, or the IPSC World Shoot, right? And so to me, at its core, USPSA kind of exists to put on nationals, if you will. If we were to boil it down to this smallest level that we possibly could, like that is why the org really needs kind of to exist, right? What do you guys think? Am I missing the ball here, or are you on the same page?
No, 100%, dude. I used to shoot 3-gun all the time.
Yeah.
And I like watched it kind of fade out, man. And you're exactly right. Like the rules would depend on the match.
Yep.
Right? You'd show up and it's like, wonder what the rules are at this particular one. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I like USPSA so much. Like, you know exactly what to expect. and you know exactly what you need to practice and get good at. Because you know the game, right? The game is going to be the same at every single one.
Right.
And that's going to promote a lot of, excellence, a lot of really, hardworking people to try to win. Whereas three gun, I don't know. Don't get me wrong, there were really good shooters in three gun, but definitely not as many as you would see in USPSA.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not talking shit. It's just from my personal experience.
Right. Yeah, no, you can definitely look at you can look at the percentages, right, and see where the spread is, across the sport. And there, like you said, there's, you look at you can look at multi-gun nationals, right? There's those, 5 guys that are within like 5% at the top of the leaderboards this weekend, right? And there's some badass shooters in those 5 guys, like Joe Farewell and Josh Freilich and the other guys that are there, right? And then you just see a real disparity between that and kind of, I think, the rest of the field a lot of times. So it's a very different kind of thing. So yeah, I think we kind of have hinted at this as well. So I think nationals is kind of what the org exists to do, but I think the prime directive that we're getting at also is simply encouraging high levels of competition, right?
When I think
encouraging folks to get better. And that is, I think we'll expand on this. I'm sorry, Brent, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
that's fine.
That's actually a controversial point, right? Like there's a lot of folks in USPSA that don't want to have any pressure on anyone to get better or encourage anyone to get better. Like if you are B class for life, that's fine. You should not be trying to change that, right? You shouldn't be trying to move anywhere else, right? If you don't want to, like that's kind of the mindset, right? And don't get me wrong, I think we make provision for folks that want to be involved and want to come out and shoot and get reps in and treat it like a golf game on the weekend with their buddies. Like that's fine. You can come on out, right? But at the same time, understand that I really think the organization can be a really powerful force, and it is, but it can be even more so encouraging folks to get better and a tool for folks to get better. Sorry, Brennan, what were you trying to say?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was basically just trying to agree. Like, I mean, I think what it does is for those guys who are, B class shooter for life, right? It's very dependent on like where your club match is, right? And the club matches in your area, right? And so you could live in an area where maybe, the competition isn't very stiff, right? Like maybe it's a bunch of, A class shooters, maybe that's the highest you have, maybe a couple M's sprinkled in there, and that's it, right?
Sure.
But with the organization kind of unifying it all, splitting it up into areas, having section matches, area matches, and then ultimately nationals, I think it just kind of unifies the organization as a whole so that you feel like you're a part of something a little bit bigger. And it also can give you some context for your performance at your local club matches before you go to those bigger area championships and nationals, right? And so you can, if I only ever shoot against A-class shooters, right, I'll never know how I would stack up to the top GMs in the country. Right. And then it doesn't push you. But the fact that any of us can go to those bigger championships where those better shooters will be and go to nationals and compete, then it allows us to really, no matter where you're from, and regardless of whether you're limited by maybe lower talent pools in your area of the country, it kind of becomes, you can use those for practice or whatever. You can shoot them, and then you can work towards something a little bit bigger. So I think that's a really cool part of it, And
it's funny because, I think there's a couple reasons for the controversy on that point, but one of the reasons is that's a weird part of the sport that I don't necessarily have a solution, or I don't know if we need to come up with a solution, but so it's kind of an interesting dichotomy that we want the kind of goal. The goal of the sport is to encourage people to compete at a high level. However, the sport depends on volunteer staffing, right, to staff the matches, and the way that the matches are generally organized, I think it's fair to say that staffing a match is a significant disadvantage as far as your shooting performance at the match, right? Like no one that takes the match seriously is gonna work the match, like most of the time. That's a bit of an overstatement, right? But for the most part, like the folks that are really seriously trying to win the match are not gonna work the match, right? And so that's kind of we need everybody, right? So I'm not trying to suggest, hey, we need to ban anyone who can't make A class from the sport. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I want folks to come in that are brand new shooters. I told the story on the podcast, maybe I think I did a couple weeks ago, about helping. I showed up and there was a guy who had just moved to the States from Canada, I think 6 months ago. And of course, here in North Carolina, he said he showed up and some of his work buddies. So like, yeah, like what kind of guns do you have? And he's like, it's like I don't have. Yeah, like, I'm from Canada, I don't have guns, And the guy's like, his buddies at work are like, you're in America now, right? Like, this is what we do here. Like, you need, So he got interested in super fast. Somehow found out about USPSA, found out about this our local indoor Thursday night match, and just like showed up, right, with like very little shooting experience, but was one of those guys that actually listened to what everyone said and took advice well, and we were able to help him through, and he crushed it, man. And I think it was a great experience for him. And man, I can't imagine when I was that new at shooting a handgun, if I had gotten introduced to that kind of high level of shooting that he saw that night, and have an understanding of, okay, these are the things that I can work on, like here's what's possible, like that, and here's different ways that I can work on it, and gotten some of the advice that he got. Man, that would have been so valuable for me. So yeah, absolutely. We need folks at all levels, but I think again, a really cool kind of prime directive, if you will, for the org is hey, let's encourage people to get better. Let's provide education, opportunities, and let's incentivize people in a lot of different ways to get better. I think there's specific ways we can do that. We can talk about some specifics in a little bit. I think another thing that I care about a lot, I know you guys do as well. I think that we can really do a better job in USPSA of just being a positive cultural influence as well, right?
That's what I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, right now, I think for a lot of folks would be absolutely shocked if I walked into downtown Charlotte this afternoon. I said, hey, you know that 3 of the top 4 pistol shooters in the world are going to be an hour from here this weekend at shooting a championship? They're going to be like, what? Like, there's shooting championships here? And I'm going to be like, yes, right? Like, no one knows what's happening, right? And outside of our very small circle, even in the shooting community, no one really understands. People, I think in the shooting community at large, people understand that there is this thing called competition shooting, but no one really knows what it is, and no one really knows what we're about. And so I'd really like to see, us making decisions based upon that as well. How can we be a positive cultural influence? Let people know that, hey, first of all, we exist. Here's what we do. Here's what we're about. And it's okay, right? And you should get involved. And guns are cool, to put it, it's just kind of a super simple level. So I think that, to me, that's super important as well. And I think we should be making decisions based on that as well, right?
It can be a great way to get, I kind of look at it 2 ways, at least the USPSA shooters I see who are like relatively new. So either they bought a handgun and they're just interested in learning how to shoot it, and then they discover USPSA, right?
Mhm.
And that's just like a hobby, which is
Right.
great. I love that for them.
Yep.
Or there's people who bought a handgun for defensive purposes. Maybe they want to carry it, maybe it's home defense, and then they learn about USPSA, and that's another thing they do on the side, right? I think that was kind of all of our experiences with it. But either way, right? Like, it's a lot of fun. So the guys who carry a gun for a living or carry a gun every day for defensive purposes have a great old time shooting USPSA, right? And then there's people who just shoot as hobbyists, right? And they have a good time. And so I feel like it's a really good way to, if we're smart about it, those of us who compete regularly, if we're smart about how we reach out to those different demographics, you can reach brand new shooters, and you can reach guys who, are more tactically minded or whatever. It's a fantastic in for both of those groups, I feel like.
Yeah. I absolutely, agree 100%. I think there's a lot of things that we can do to encourage those newer shooters to get involved. I was listening to a podcast interview with one of the USPSA presidential candidates. They were talking about out at Richmond Rod and Gun Club on the West Coast. Like they literally have like a day before the match, like they have a regular occurring like intro to USPSA type class for new shooters, not like, hey, this is a JJ Racaza performance shooting course type thing, right? It's a, hey, here's how the sport works. Here's how you don't get DQ'd. Like, here's what kind of gear you need, like the basic stuff, right? Just like new shooters interested in the sport specifically, something that anybody who's shot this can do, right? That any match director can do, whatever the case may be. Having those kind of opportunities for folks, I think, is really, really important because getting involved in something like this is daunting for a lot of people. And it's funny once you get into it, when someone asks you a question, you're tempted to like, hey, how do I learn about the rules, or whatever for USPSA? It's super easy to be like, read the rule book right now. Like, it's not that hard, right? But for folks that don't even like know where to start, like that can be a pretty tall order to just say, hey, just go open the rule book that's however many 100 pages and just like figure out what you need to know.
Yeah.
So I think we can absolutely do a better job of education and encouraging newer folks to get into the sport as well. I think that's huge.
I think that starts at the club level too,
Yeah.
Like you go to your local match and you're familiar with it, and maybe like, I understand like some days I just want to show up and I want to shoot. I don't really want to, talk or whatever. Like I'm there to figure something out maybe that I've been working on. But I mean, a lot of times there's no harm in grabbing in somebody who looks new or said they were new and just like helping them walk through it, right? Like explain a rule to them if they don't understand it, or, hey, why did he score it like that? Well, here, let me tell you, right? I mean, it doesn't take much out of your day, right? Or maybe give them a little tip on, whatever it is, right? Like, hey, man, if you reload it on the move there, that might save you time. Oh, that's cool, right? And like, you can just, it doesn't cost you anything, right? And I see I see sometimes a lot of like elitism forming at the club matches, especially, right? And there's like the buddies and they all know each other, right? And they're all like pretty good shooters and they don't want to have anything to do with anyone else. Like they're just there to hang out. And it's like, man, you could like, even if every other match you just talk to one new shooter, right? Like that would make a huge difference, right? So I'm a big believer in that starting just at the club level. Just, man, be approachable, talk to people. People are there. They want to have fun. They want to learn. A lot of them do, especially the new ones. So
yeah, no, I love that you brought that up. I think that's definitely for any match directors that are listening. Don't encourage that mentality at your matches. I know.
Yeah,
I'll say for right now, like there are certain matches that I go to as somebody who's shining up. I sign up for matches with that letter G after my name, right? Which suppose you would think might come with some credibility or whatever. And there's certain guys that I've tried to squad with several times. And sure enough, the morning of the match, the match director rebalances the squads, and I've gotten kicked off the cool guy squad, every single time I've ever signed up for that match, right? And you end up in a squad with all the people who don't know anybody that's involved in running the match, right? And if I hadn't been there a lot of times, like there would be nobody in that squad who knows what they're doing. And that's just a really bad experience, right? For the folks that are in that. I get people want to show up and shoot with their buddies, and nothing wrong with that. At the same time, we need to make sure that we're actually there's some folks that know what they're doing in every squad, and there's some folks that can help out. I'll also say, you mentioned giving people tips and so forth. If you're one of those guys listening that needs tips or help or wants help or whatever, I would encourage you, don't be shy about asking for that stuff, man. Because I'm the guy at the match. I try not to be that guy that goes around offering unsolicited advice all the time.
There's
right?
a big difference. There's a big difference.
But if you ask me at a match, I will 100% help you any way that I possibly can. I'm not going to hold back. I'm not that guy that's trying to hold back my stage plan or whatever it is. Like, I will talk you through every single thing that I'm doing and why, and give you tips and advice. But a lot of people just don't want that, right? And so I'm not going to force myself upon folks at the match. But
there's a caveat to that. So like when to ask is not when the dude is making ready.
You're right. Yes.
Right. I've legit had that happen, and I'm like,
Sure.
like looking back, like, is this really happening right now? Like, just give me a minute, man. Let me shoot this stage, and then we'll talk. But
sure.
you know,
No, you're 100% right.
the make ready process is not the time to talk.
Correct.
Let the man do his thing, or girl do her thing.
Right. 100%. Good stuff. So I guess we can talk about a few specific things, right? Starting off with maybe some equipment divisions. That's always the hot topic, right? And so I guess I'll start off asking you this question because I think this is important. What do you guys think the actual point of the divisions are? Like, why do the divisions exist? Kind of how should they be organized, do you think?
Well, they're there so everyone can compete on the same playing field, right? Limited major, same playing field, right? Production, same playing field. I think when you start muddying the waters, like the whole, 2011 thing in carry optics, I do not think that's the same playing field as a striker-fired polymer gun, right?
Right.
So then the question becomes like, is this fair, right? And I guess you could say, yeah, it is, because anyone could run in 2011. But like, is that what that particular division is all about? Because if you wanted to run a 2011, you could do so in open, limited 10. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, if you want to run in 2011, go run it in that one, right?
Yeah.
And those divisions are there for a reason. It's just to level, make sure everyone is on the same exact playing field. So.
Yeah, so I tend to agree, right? The way I would phrase it is the point of the divisions is to give people an opportunity to shoot the guns they want with some competitive equity, right? So technically, if competitive equity was the only goal, we could just have open, and everybody that wants to could go shoot open and have competitive equity, right? But a lot of people don't want to shoot those guns. So what guns people want to shoot is actually important for how we design our divisions, right? We're not trying to force people to shoot guns that they don't care about or don't want to or don't carry or aren't applicable to them, right? And so that's obviously going to change over time. That's okay. There's definitely, and I would say especially among some high level competitors, right? Some different thoughts about the divisions. I think that would include, designing divisions around. More specifically around promoting high level competition. So in other words, we should design divisions such a way that design divisions around a division of skills, if you will.
Okay.
So as an example, if I just say, give people an example, an opportunity to shoot the guns they want, well, then essentially every division could be high cap, right? So we could have production high cap, and if people want to run 23 round mags, it's or whatever, the same thing we run in carry optics. There's no reason for them not to do that. Some folks would say, hey, if we're designing divisions around more of a division of skills, it's interesting to have low cap divisions that that's going to change up your stage plans. It's going to require a higher emphasis on the gun handling skills, on the reloads and things like that. And so I think when you start thinking about it that way, sometimes the divisions of where you want to change up what guns are where is definitely going to change a little bit. And it also drives this idea that our divisions need to be substantially different from each other. We don't want divisions that are too similar, because then essentially the skills required to shoot well in those two divisions are the same, right? So kind of a different thought. What's your guys' thought about that kind of design mentality for divisions?
I mean, yeah, I think there's definitely a danger to having, like, I think if we're going to have different divisions based on equipment, right? Like, I think that there has to be a pretty distinct line between the different divisions, right? And so that gets into, if you follow USPSA at all, right? Like the single action only in carry optics, right? And then that bleeds into, oh, well, you might as well just be shooting open minor if all you care about is your gun. And then it's like, well, if I don't care. It's you get the guys who are like, well, I just want to shoot my, staccato XC, right? And they're like, but I don't really care that I'm not going to be competitive. So that's why I'm not shooting in open, but then they want to get into carry optics. I'm like, well, I mean, so you do care about being competitive actually. Right. And you want to use your, your tool or your gun to its maximum capability. I understand that. Right. But there's like, I mean, if we start having all these divisions, so you could either make divisions bigger, right, to include more, more, more types of guns, or you could start adding divisions, which then that gets really, really niche, right? And I mean, at that point, you might as well have like a division. If we did single action only carry optics style division, right? You're going to have like 3, maybe 4 companies, gun manufacturers represented in that division, right? And so it just gets to be a question of like, what do you care about? I think do you care about being able to shoot your gun, or do you care about being competitive in a specific division? And I think gear kind of comes down to where that to being the limiting factor, right? People just wanting to shoot the stuff that they have. I think it's great to have a cap on it, right? So like with carry optics, I think it's great to have a cap where, one of the higher end carry optics guns is maybe going to be, I don't know, $1,500 maybe. And then the higher end open guns are like $7,000 or $8,000, right? Like that's a big difference. Like I could maybe afford a $1,500 gun, right? And I do not have the financial wherewithal to afford an open gun. And right, like I could shoot my little comped or, stock ported gun in open minor, sure, right? Like absolutely. I started that way. But then I realized like, hey, there's some potential to be like decent at this. And so I switched to a division where I could be competitive based on what I had, right? So I think that's what makes it approachable for people, for new people. It's like, man, what do you have? All right. Based on what you have, here's the division you can fit in. Right. I think that's a good way to do it.
Yep.
But
yeah, so I think I was playing the devil's advocate, a little bit. I think that
sure.
I don't necessarily get the argument, the division of skills argument, even though it's made by some super high level shooters. Take production as an example. Even with production 10, the way it is right now, it's not like being successful in production is a reload competition. Like it's not whoever has the fastest reloads wins.
No.
Like sure, your reloads, you have to emphasize those a little bit more when you're shooting a low cap division, but it's still like the shooting part and all the other things that are important that make the biggest difference, right? And I think that it's not like, again, your grip, having a good grip is somehow less important in carry optics than it is in limited. Like that's not how that works. Like the shooting skills are essentially the same. No matter what gun it is you're shooting, you're going to apply them a little bit differently, right? But the skills are the same. So I don't really get that. I think going back to what we said at the beginning, I think designing the divisions, give opportunities for people to shoot the guns they want to shoot and have competitive equity is the way that I definitely look at it. I think when we setting it up that way, it's not like that it doesn't prevent opportunities for high level competition in any way that I can see.
Well, and I'll frequently see like very good shooters, M class or GM shooters, right? And they'll jump into another division, right? And guess what? Like, yes, they have to learn like a new platform, right? Yeah. Maybe they switch platforms completely, right? Mm-hmm. But very, very quickly, if they put in some time, right, they get used to that platform, they get used to the scoring if they need to, and they are extremely competitive in that division now, right? Like their USPSA skills transfer over, regardless of whether or not you have an optic on or a mag well or big mags or little mags, right? Like they still know how to shoot. So, and then they can go and be competitive in that division. So, I don't really understand the separation of divisions by like skill set. I
agree 100%. I mean, you look at guys like, we'll see if this holds true, right? I mean, we have an unclassified carry optic shooter shooting Area 6 this weekend that I'm assuming is definitely going to be in the top 3, right? In Christian Seiler, right? We're not going to see him switch from open to carry optics and all of a sudden the dude can't shoot. Like that's not how it works.
Wasn't JJ unclassified in CO?
JJ won CO Nationals as an unclassified shooter, right?
And
so
guess what? Like no one
how that works.
no one freaked out about that. Like,
Yeah.
if it had been like some no-name person that we didn't know and he was unclassified and he came in and won, we would freak out.
Right.
But everybody knows JJ. Everybody knows that, his level of skill and his classification in other divisions. And so no one was surprised that he came in and won. Right. So, yeah.
Yep. 100%. All right. So here it is. If you guys got USPSA God for a day, what divisions do we have?
Oh, jeez.
Like we can make a new division? Is that what you're saying?
Just wipe the slate clean. What divisions do we need?
I definitely think we still need open.
Yep, definitely need to open. I love it.
I think we need some version of both carry optics and production, whether or not production is still like 10 rounds or not. I guess I don't really care. But I think you need to have some sort of like stock pistol with like iron sights and stock pistol with an optic. Yep. Right. Agreed. I think limited is a good division and should stay. Mm-hmm. I think single stack is a dumb division. Agreed. And like I really don't give a shit if you shoot revolver or not. Like I don't know. Like whatever, man. Did I miss one? Oh, and I think PCC should be
we're talking about getting rid of divisions, right? The problem with having a division is that we have to put on nationals for it.
Yeah, definitely, right?
We should not be putting on a revolver nationals like this.
No. Yeah. So by that reasoning, it's out too. And I think PCC should be in its own league. Like how multi-gun or like the USPSA 2-gun is a different game because it is a totally different game. And like my eyes, I always knew that, but my eyes really got open to that. There's a match I was shooting and I can't remember. I think it was a major match. It might've been South Carolina sectional, right? But I squatted somehow on accident with a whole PCC squad. I was the only pistol shooter in the squad. Right. And seeing how they like, none of them were super, super good, but seeing the way they ran stages and the advantages they had with PCC, even, shooting minor it was like, wow, that is very significant. Like you are playing a whole different game than me. And it honestly threw me off a little bit because I would watch their stage plans. I'd start like, second guessing myself. Right. And that's when I really realized like, man, that is a different game. Like, I think it's fantastic. I think there should be a game for long guns and rifles, right? Mm-hmm. I'm pretty interested in that myself at some point, but in a pistol match.
Yeah. So. Yeah, no, I've had it. So we'll divert to that for a second. I'm super interested. I'm getting into PCC. I'm start hitting it heavily after nationals this year. And I'm interested to explore it. My thoughts have kind of mirrored yours, being a rifle shooter primarily, right? Which is that like, normal USPSA stages are not set up to be challenging shooting events for a rifle, right? They're just not.
Right. Right.
However, you talk about there being a different game. Like I don't know that it is a different game, but it's a different game almost in the same way that open and production are a different game, right? Like there's a big difference between those two guns as far as the capabilities and what you're typically going to be doing with them. PCC is the same way. A lot of the folks I talk to though that are big in the PCC game like have no interest in it being a challenging rifle competition. Like they want to hose with a rifle, right? I don't see a massive disadvantage for us having, I guess, PCC participate in USPSA matches. I think if you made it a standalone division, it would definitely hurt participation. Obviously, standalone sport would hurt participation, but I would really, really, really like to see a practical action rifle sport take over using hit factor scoring. That was an actual rifle sport and had good mix of challenges to it. That would be really, really cool.
I think some of the stuff that Max Lee Grandis is like pushing and hosting is very interesting. I think he's going in a fantastic direction with that. And I hope that blows up and gets really, really popular. Mm-hmm. And I think that also has the potential to be very popular with the, we'll call them the tactical crowd, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Hey man, like come run your come run your 5.56 gun. I would do it. That sounds awesome.
Dude,
Absolutely.
I would totally be down.
Yep. So PCC aside, right? I'm fine with it being included or not. I'm somewhat ambivalent on PCC right now. So I think going back to our thing where we don't have to see massive differences in the divisions. I think right now we do have people that obviously want to shoot iron sights, and we have people that want to shoot optics. I think over time we're going to see less and less demand for irons, and maybe those divisions will fade. For right now, I think we could pretty much sum up what we need with production irons, production optics, limited irons, limited optics, and open. Like those 5 divisions would cover what we need really, really well.
So limited optics would be like single action only.
It's what everybody wants, dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You savage.
Yeah. I think it would literally be limited optics, right? Minor. I mean, not major. I would say minor only. I would go minor only for everything if I was God for a day. But
yeah, the thing is, like, limited optics major already exists. It's called open, right?
it sort of, right? So that's the difference being frame mounted optics and comps, right?
Okay. Yeah. Pretty damn close though.
Yeah. So I mean, limited.
But making it minor only would be more than enough difference.
Yeah. So anyway, that'd be cool. Maybe we'll talk about nationals as well. I don't know if you guys have big thoughts on nationals or how we should be running it or whatever. I have some thoughts, but based on go ahead.
I wanted to see if Nick had anything different that he would add if he was USPSA guy.
Okay. You mean on the divisions?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Like as in adding one?
Or do what you want,
I think
man.
It would be cool. I think it would be cool to have an all AIWB and guns like this, like with a flashlight, an optic, and a comp. Because like, how many people carry guns like this? I think it'd be super cool.
It would be cool,
and I think a lot of people would do it. I would do it. And I've competed with guns like this before in the open. And this ain't an open gun, man. Like it's, I mean, if you want to be competitive, it's not an open gun. So I don't know, some sort of like carry optics modified or something like that. I don't know. I think it'd be cool, but all AIWB, guns like this, minor guns, 9mm optic
from concealment,
flashlight, and a comp. Yep.
I can dig it.
Yeah. Open minor concealment type thing. Yeah. That's cool. That's cool.
I could jump in on that for sure.
I would totally jump in on that.
Yeah. I don't really think I need a comp, but
I've actually played around with that. I have like 2 or 3 standalone inside the waistband mag pouches too. And so like I just run my like regular holster, right? And then I run like 2 of those and like I load from like a Neomag.
Yeah.
It's actually
that's
pretty rad.
Illegal, but you know.
Loading from Neomag?
Yeah, a little bit.
You can carry a mag in your pocket to load from.
You literally can't. But
for your make ready mag,
your make ready mag, you can.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I got you.
Unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh.
Every time I'm like, I'm gonna go shoot a match from concealment, and I'm gonna do the same exact thing. I'm gonna put 2 mag pouches in my waistband, and the morning of, I'm like, no, I'm trying to win. So
grab his belt. Yep.
Yeah, folks don't understand, right? So, like, literally, just a side note on that, folks will get up on the high horse when it comes to these division discussions and be like, hey, it doesn't really matter. It's all the shooter, right? And it's like, man, you don't understand. Yes, right? Like, I can pick any gun I want and go shoot a match against Christian Seiler shooting a production gun. He's probably going to kick my butt, right? But as far as when you're competing with guys at your level, right? Both of my last 2 matches have been determined by less than 1% in car optics. Like, straight up, less than 0.75%, right? So when you're consistently shooting at that high level, like the differences are not like in big chunks. It is, tenths of a second, and 2 and 3 points here and there, and gear adds or removes obstacles to performance. Sure.
Yep.
At the end of the day, if you can't run your gun, it doesn't matter. But yes, gear does make a difference. And so if you really do want to compete to the top of your ability, and you can actually consistently do that in a measurable way, if you're showing up and your performance is swinging by 20%, give or take, per match, because you're not consistently performing at that level, you're not going to notice a difference. You're not going to be able to define a difference depending on what gun you're running, right? But when you are, yes, it makes a difference.
Hence the idea of having divisions.
Yes. Absolutely. So I think Nationals is super interesting. I think there's a lot of things we can think about with Nationals. We don't need to dive into the weeds on it super deep, but I'm not a fan right now of a lot of things we're doing with Nationals, based upon the directives we talked about at the beginning. So as an example, like it's super hard for someone like, as an example, like the Outdoor Channel, to care about like putting on good coverage for USPSA Nationals when we have like 7 of them. Right? Like, which one matters? I just straight on, I don't even know. The default answer would probably be like open, right? Because that's like where the big boys play, right? But then like really like the Nationals to cover this year would probably be Carry Optics, right? Because that's where everyone's going, right? But it's like, man, we just have all these Nationals, all the big players are going to be at all of them, and it's just like, okay, it really, I think, waters down the importance of saying you're a national champion when you get 7 shots at it every year, or however many it is, right? So I don't know. I honestly do like the idea of having one big national championship, at the end of the shooting season, for everybody, and you got one shot at that thing, and there's a lot of things we could do to make that, workable, I think, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's like, back in the day, the 3-gun nationals, it was all on television.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was one, it was like the Super Bowl. It was super popular. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to do that, though. I don't know how you would do that, though, with USPSA, because there's so many different divisions.
Well, that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Steel Challenge Nationals used to be on TV too before there was 13 divisions, and like the Super Squad wasn't a thing anymore, right? Yeah. So, yeah, that's one of the things I was getting at. I think that a lot of people have the argument, well, it doesn't hurt anybody to have Limited 10 and Revolver and these kind of divisions in place. And it's like, yeah, it does, because we're required to include you guys in area matches and nationals and everything else. Man, that's
wow.
a pretty sweet setup right there. That's not bad.
That's pretty good.
That's a good ass woman right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you could definitely put on a 5-division nationals for USPSA. That'd be fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it would be cool to place a higher emphasis, and I don't have all this worked out, right? But along the lines of encouraging high levels of competition, and encouraging people to get better. The way we're essentially running nationals right now, like a big club match. I mean, it is essentially run the exact same way. So, we have C-class champions at nationals, right? I'm not I'm not looking down or criticizing on folks that are new to shooting or in C-class, but that drives me crazy. Like, that is not the point of nationals.
Like, how can you get a first place trophy of any kind when you were 50th percent?
Yes.
Right?
That.
Or 70th percent.
Right. Right. So, yes.
I mean, I'm all about trophies, but I don't expect any A-class trophies. I
Right.
don't want it.
So yeah, that's what I was like. I never wanted to be the fastest kid on the slow bus, right? That was never my goal when I was coming up. People were telling me like, oh, don't you should like definitely not make GM before you go to your first area match or whatever. And I'm like, no, I really could not care less if I get first place masterclass when I'm 15th or whatever at the match. Like I don't care. Like it literally doesn't mean anything to me. And so I think that's the mindset, and because we literally have people that are trying not to get better, like in a sense, at some point, in order to maintain these kind of trophy opportunities and so forth. And
or they're staying in a division that's not competitive anymore,
or that. And so we're literally in some cases like almost penalizing people for moving up in classification because they now have less of an opportunity to get these trophies and awards and so forth, and win guns and have prize tables and all that kind of stuff if they move up. And I'm like, man, this is not cool. We should not be incentivizing people to stay in lower classes. Like that's not what we should be doing. So I think we should change the way that works at nationals, and I think we should place a higher emphasis on performance-based slots. I would like to see area matches and section matches sort of be a playoffs for getting into nationals. I think that would be really, really cool.
Like as far as like first dibs on slots.
Yeah. Obviously if we had one big nationals at the end of the year, going to be a lot more demand for those slots. Not everybody that wants to go is going to be able to go, right? And by the way, if we use my system, I couldn't have gone last year, right? Like, so I'm not saying this as some like elitist, top national shooter that is, just trying to kick everybody else out, right? I'm just saying I think this would place, a lot more incentive on guys like me to work harder, which is like what I want the sport to do. And by the way, if you don't qualify and you still want to go, you can sign up to work the match, and you get in that way. Right. And so now we have probably a massive applicant pool for staff, and you could hopefully get the best folks into officiating, nationals as well, which might help solve that problem. I don't know. But
I also think that like having so like a nationals is more competitive to get into, right? Is fewer divisions. Is just overall more competitive, is going to, like you said, push people to work harder during the year and do better at their other major matches.
Yep.
But I also think that kind of to the like being able to televise it and make it a bigger deal than it is now. I think that if we also had a little bit of better education as to like what the divisions were, right, then covering a 5 division or even 6 division nationals wouldn't be that hard. Like if people knew what limited was, compared to carry optics, right, it wouldn't be that hard because we do that kind of stuff all the time when we watch various like pro-am stuff, right? We see people at different skill levels in different divisions or classes or whatnot, right? And we're able to follow along, right? I think like golf is a pretty good example of that, right? You can watch multiple different skill levels of different players playing in different tournaments or whatnot on TV. And as long as you're just kind of clued into the world of golf a little bit, like you can definitely watch it and enjoy it and follow along and have a good time, right? So I think the same could be said of shooting, but there needs to be an elevated education piece. And I think that largely could fall on the organization to kind of spearhead that.
I think the other big thing along that line, I can't understand why like the super squad seems to be discretionary or optional nowadays. That makes it really, really difficult. I think if someone wanted to cover the event, because they can't follow the super squad. So you have like some random decent shooters in the super squad, and then guys like Max Michel wasn't on the super squad at Care Optics Nationals, and I'm just like, what was happening? Like that, that shouldn't be a thing.
Why is that? Why is that? Like, why did he just opt out or what?
Yeah, it's just pretty much optional now.
I wonder why. Is that just like less pressure for him?
You have to ask him. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it should. I don't think it should be optional. I think because again, that's a competitive equity thing. Anyway, even if it is more pressure, like the top guys the guys that have a chance, to win the match should be shooting at the same times of day on the same stages. All that kind of stuff, right? We should try to make that as equitable as possible. I mean, at nationals this year, some guys, depending on what schedule you were in, shot certain stages essentially in the dark, right? And so if you picked a different schedule, like you had a massive advantage on that stage, and that shouldn't determine who wins nationals, like which schedule you picked. So anyway, just my 2 cents on that as well. But anyway, final thoughts, guys. I think we spent enough time probably poking holes in what's going on at USPSA right now, and a lot of opinions and different stuff there. Anything else?
Yeah, what do you guys think about sorry. What do you guys think about USPSA being more vocal about 2A stuff? Because like in my opinion, like what better group is there out there? Like what other shooting group is there out there that has this many, like I would venture to say some of the best shooters in the world? So like super educated, very, very professional, really, really good shooters. Like why is this not more why are they not more outspoken about Second Amendment stuff? I would love to see that.
Agree 100%. Yeah, again, I think cultural influence, obviously, like I said, definitely one of my prime goals for growth. I think, for the sport, definitely influencing culture. Like again, just things like yes, advocacy, and yes, being outspoken about things about the Second Amendment and so forth. Right. I think even more, honestly, things like getting back on TV and things like that probably have more widespread impact on cultural change than just like saying stuff a lot of times. But yes, across the board, I agree 100%. Right now it's pretty silent on a lot of those issues.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, if you're silent, you're just basically leaving it up to the fucking chuckleheads at the NRA and stuff like that. So, like, why not get the better people involved or the more educated people in what we're talking about?
The shooters.
Yeah, 100%. I think people would be surprised that like freaking an IT guy is like a professional shooter, right?
Yeah.
And is that into it? I think a lot of people think that only like white dudes who are rednecks shoot or something, and it's totally not the case. So,
yeah. I think too, like just as a way of kind of closing up too, like I think that I hear a lot of people with very strong opinions who don't really do anything to contribute where they can. Usually the loudest voices at the matches I go to complaining about something are people who aren't putting any effort into anything at all, right? And whether or not it's some way the match is being run or whatnot, right? Like they weren't there to set up, right? They're not going to stay to tear down. They're not helpful in between stages. They're not welcoming new shooters. They're not offering to RO, like none of that, right? And so I think to a small level, right? I think there's definitely big organizational changes that I would like to see. But at a local level, like, man, just like be helpful. Like we already talked about, like if there's a new shooter, like talk to the new shooter, right? But also like pace targets and like tear down your stage. And if you can go early to help set up, like do that and like make yourself valuable somehow to where you're contributing and making it a better experience for people who show up, right? I think if everybody was a little bit more invested at the local level too. We would see that kind of carry its way up to major matches and even nationals, and affecting the board and elections and everything else. So
yeah, agree. Good
that's all I got.
stuff. All right, couple things. This week in shooting, I'll kick it off. So obviously we've talked about it a little bit already, going into Area 6 championship here for us this weekend down here in North Carolina. So for me, I'd love to hear if you guys have any thoughts on this, right? So, but my training always changes up a little bit going into something like this. Last couple weeks or so, I'm essentially not trying to get better, right? I'm not trying to learn new stuff. It becomes essentially I'm just really working on consistency, right? Consistent execution of max match mode, minimizing mistakes, that kind of stuff. Was able to shoot the match this past Saturday kind of exactly the way that I wanted to for the most part. In that, I was only competing against one other GM, so it wasn't like a super stacked field where I could really compare scores. But it was interesting. It was interesting to me that I won, I think 2 out of the 7 stages, which is a pretty low number. But won the match, which was kind of my goal, right? I was not trying to shoot lights out on anything in particular. Wasn't trying to push super hard on anything in particular. I was just trying to shoot super, super consistent within my skill set and kind of avoid the disaster factor, which worked out pretty well for me.
Pays off.
Was that?
Pays off.
Yeah. It's tough. It's a really tough concept to get a hold of, right? I mean, Ben Steger obviously won production nationals without winning a single stage, which is you would think would be impossible. But man, that consistency, if you can find that zone, you still have to shoot at a high level, right? You still have to be top 5 on every stage, right? But if you can just stay in that zone and not make mistakes, man, it's huge. So I think training for consistency, I start not doing. So in my training, I stopped doing things over and over. Right, I try to change what I'm shooting up a lot between reps, and I get one shot at it, and see how it goes. I don't know. You guys got any other thoughts, or do anything differently if you're training for like a big event like that where you really want to be in the zone?
I mean, it's pretty much just that.
For me, it's the same.
Yeah.
Yep. Consistency of visual aggression, patience as well. I think it's something for me that I constantly have to work on, right? Because I would rather go fast. Consistently moving my feet when I should be, not standing still. And shooting, stuff like that. That would be what I would be working on if I was going to that.
Yeah, you talked about like top 5 stage. Like if you're at least in the top 5 for every stage, you're going to do pretty well. Like that's literally what I think about is this needs to be a top 5 run, right? And so that means that if I take too many risks, right, trying to get 1, right, that's like not all that more beneficial to me than if I got 4th place on the stage overall, right? But I got to do it for every stage. So I try to minimize the amount of risks that I take. Shoot, like you said, shoot to my skill level. Honestly, I do this for every match. Like I try to, just because I don't shoot that many majors. But yeah, I literally just try to think, man, how could I be consistently in the top, 5 or very close to that, and not have anything down in like the 20th place. Because when I have a dumpster fire, it doesn't matter how many stages you won, it starts to cancel out real quick. So yeah, pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think something else that stood out to me in the match this weekend as well, and I'm talking about this in my 2-day performance class that weekend with some of the guys. It's kind of same lines, but looking for, I guess, low risk opportunities to excel. So in other words, when you're looking for those opportunities to get ahead of your competition, You know, again, shooting faster is not the way to do it. I'm not looking for those arrays where I can just really, really blaze, you know, with the splits and so forth, right? I love to do that. That's a lot of fun, good stuff. But what I'm really looking for, as an example, the one stage I won, you know, Saturday. Honestly, I think it was a stage planning win, right? Like I think I figured out something that all the top guys in the other squad didn't do that way. Was what I'm getting the impression of from watching the videos and so forth. So that didn't cost me anything. It didn't require any additional risk. It just made me be really, really careful in the way that I looked at the stage and look for those kind of opportunities. Looking for the big one that I tell folks all the time is, and this really I've started looking at in a different way, I think, Nick, since the last time we trained with JJ, right? A big takeaway from the second time I trained with him was simply looking for opportunities on the stage to exit aggressively from places, right?
That was huge for me too.
There was, you know, the super aggressive exits, right? There are obvious places to use those, right? Like where I'm, you know, standing on a fault line and I have to stand here on this fault line until I shoot this target, and then I'm going to run a long way. You're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do a super aggressive leaning exit out of the spot, right? But there are a lot of other places to use those as well throughout the stage that are significantly less obvious, but can pay off with massive chunks of time, you know, throughout the stage that again require essentially no additional risk. So anyway, looking for those kind of things on the stage, I think is the ways that you look for chances to make up time and points over the competition, and not so much the risky bits.
Yep, dude,
right.
Yeah. Movement, dude. That class in particular took me from, like, I would always place in like the top 10 at like go shoot matches and stuff.
Sure.
After that particular class is when I started to, like, you know, every other time it was like, hey, I won this one. Hey, I won that one too. And it was just simply the movement stuff. I was shooting the same, shooting controlled, decent transitions, and just legit moving my feet when I was supposed to be, entering and exiting like I should be, blending targets, blending positions. I mean, that class, yeah, it was massive takeaways on that one.
Yep, absolutely. JJ's the man. For sure. Good stuff. I got a question to wrap us up. You guys got any other this week in shooting things you wanted to bring up before we move on? What's been going on? Anything interesting?
I'm just teaching a bunch of classes, so
yeah.
I wish I was going to Area 6, but going to teach a class.
There you go.
Yeah, same for us, man. We're busy. Generally like 3 classes a week or so. So yeah, got our hands full. But trying to sneak in some training days here and there. Some evenings I'll just stay late and get some stuff in. Had a really productive range session the other night. Just getting to the point where I was shooting as fast as I could pull the trigger and just calling my shots. I need a lot of practice with that. So that was really good. And I was seeing like super consistent performance too. And I think it was because I was not necessarily trying to go fast. I was just trying to see everything that was happening. And because of that, I was seeing very consistent performances in some of my best performances. And also I identified a couple things that I was like, all right, shoot, I need to take that back to dry fire, and I'm not going to spend any more ammo on that.
I love that.
So it was really nice. You know, you have those days when you get out and shoot and you feel good just because you went out and shot. There's some days you go out and shoot and you feel good because you started to figure some stuff out and gave yourself some homework. So it's definitely one of those days, but yeah, man, just trying to stay on top of stuff. I'm excited about shooting more outdoor matches now that it should be warming up. It's not warmed up, but it should be warming up here pretty soon. So eventually I'll shoot some outdoor matches.
Cold part of the country, my man.
Dude, it was like in the 60s, and then it started snowing. It was like big, fluffy, white Christmas snow.
Oh, yeah.
And like I got my truck washed, got all the salt off of it. I was like, all right, this is awesome. And then a bunch of snow, salted the roads again. It's like, what is this, man? So I'm actually coming back down south this weekend. So hopefully it's a little bit warmer.
You're coming down this weekend and you're not shooting?
Yeah, I know. I'll wave at you as I drive by.
Well,
All right.
I know. I'm a huge disappointment to you. I know.
You are, man. You are. No, I'm looking forward to hopefully all this wonderful weather you're having is gone by the time I'm back up there in a few weeks.
Hopefully.
I'm looking forward to that though. All right. So interesting question. One that I get a lot. I don't know why I get it because I'm the wrong person to answer this question. So I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say on this one. Which is the way it's usually phrased is something along the lines of, basically my significant other has no interest, but how do I essentially force them into shooting or carrying a gun for self-defense or whatever the case is, right? Obviously, I think the universal thing that applies to that is you don't want to force anyone to get into guns, because if they don't have the mindset to actually be able to use that to begin with, they're probably more of a liability than anything, regardless what their skill set is. But interested to hear from you guys, right? Just generally, not the forcing bit, but what are your thoughts on encouraging loved ones or whatever that may not be as excited or passionate about you are, or to get into shooting, being prepared in various ways, guns or otherwise, for self-defense and that kind of stuff? What kind of tips you guys got for the people?
yeah, I'd like to know because I have horrible luck with that.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, my wife carries, but like, yeah, she don't shoot, so it's
you.
not that great, man. Not that great. And the whole like carrying in the bottom of the purse thing,
right?
And we've had this conversation like, hey, it's in the bottom of your purse, okay? I guess it's better than not having it at all, but
Maybe
if something happens, you're going to be like, hang on a minute, let me dig through all of my shit and try to find my Glock 42 to possibly shoot you with, yeah. I need someone else to teach her, not me.
Well, that's a great. If you were going to bring that one up, I was going to bring that one up, right?
It doesn't work when it's your wife.
Yeah.
100%. I definitely agree with that. Yeah, so I think there's two different ways to look at this, right? So I've gotten this question as well. And I think there's a big difference between getting your wife kind of squared away on maybe like how your guns work, right? Mm-hmm. How to load a gun, how to maybe hit something with the gun, right? Hey, honey, this is our home defense gun. This is the AR-15, right? You do this, you flip this switch, you point it, and you pull the trigger, right? As many times as you need to, right? Mm-hmm. There's a difference between maybe taking your wife out or your significant other, right, and showing them the basics, teaching them kind of a very intro level of load a gun, aim a gun, fire a gun, right? And then there's people who like expect their spouses or their significant others to be like training partners. Mm-hmm. And like straight up, man, like if she does not want to be your training partner, she's not going to be your training partner. And if you try to drag her out there, like it's not going to be fun for either of you, right? And like that might cause some other problems in your relationship. Yeah. So the way I look at it is, if safety is your main concern of like, hey, you're at home with kids or by yourself, right, during the day, or maybe you go to work, right? I want you to be able to have this option, right? Well, first of all, like you can get her squared away, maybe like, yeah, with another instructor, so she knows the basics, right? Maybe just brushing up on stuff. But there's also like other options, right? Like there's a lot of other options like pepper spray and tasers and flashlights and other things that you can do with her, right, to help her kind of stay a little safer, right? Man, I'm just a big believer in like if she is not into the idea of being your training partner, like I don't have anything for you, because you should not be making her do that, right? You wouldn't do that to one of your friends, like force them to come with you and they're just not having a good time. Like you wouldn't make them come back out, right? So like don't do that with the person you have to live with. But I do think there's a big difference between that and then also just showing them how to shoot, how to operate something if they need it. Right.
Yep.
And also, like, if
Absolutely.
they're not comfortable carrying because they know their skill set's not there, then I don't think they should carry.
100%.
Because I think that has the potential to get them a lot more hurt than if they weren't carrying.
Yep.
So,
agreed. Yeah, I think what
want-
Nick was starting to get at, though, man, like I think that's huge. I think obviously everybody's different, but there's no one's an expert in their own home, right? Even if you are, let's say a grandmaster, national instructor, like top dude, right? Like maybe someone else could do a better job of teaching your significant other how to shoot, like just straight up, right? That is definitely a thing. And so if they're interested, but they're not interested in hearing what you have to say, like just take that L, send them to somebody else, right? Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Get them in a class. If you decide, consider to send them on their own. But if you decide to take the class, this I know all three of us instructors can jump on this bandwagon right now. If you decide to take the class with your significant other, you are not the instructor at that course. Leave them alone.
God, I hate that so much.
Don't be that guy.
That's
Do not be that guy.
Dude, you know what I do? I put them on opposite ends of the range.
Yeah.
I give him a chance.
Sometimes you have to.
Him, not her.
Right.
I give him a chance, and then like, dude, if he is like over there saying something completely different, I'm like, I need you to go to the other end. Suck it up,
right,
and go to the other end.
Right. You can talk on the way home, if you whatever, but like right now, yeah.
Like, dude.
Totally.
Yeah. It's kind of like, hey man, this is the reason why she's not that great yet, because you are teaching her the wrong things, and she doesn't want to listen to you.
Right.
Dude, I had this couple come in.
I
had this couple come in, and she didn't know, like, she had her own gun, right? She didn't know how to load a magazine. Okay. And I was like, why don't you know how to load a magazine? And I was like, have you shot before? She's like, oh yeah, I shoot we shoot frequently as a family. I was like, why don't you know how to load a mag? She's like, well, my husband doesn't let me. He does it for me. And I was like, you stop it. And she's like, well, I don't need to learn from you because my husband will do it for me. I was like, nonsense. I'm like, You're going to do it yourself. I unloaded her mags and made her load them herself. I was like, and it was the exact same thing. He kept butting in. I was like, nope, you have to be quiet now. You have to be quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of truth to that.
Good times.
Well, dudes do what dudes do, and the majority of us can watch a John Wayne movie and think that we're a fucking cowboy, and myself included. And,
I mean, I am.
You have to, like you have to keep that in check sometimes, right? Us dudes have egos, and I think that's a good thing, but you have to be realistic too.
Yeah.
So. Yep.
Good question.
Yeah, I like it. I think takeaways. Education's all you can try to encourage, right? And at the end of the day, like I said, if whether it's a lady or a dude or whoever it is, for whatever reason, looks at it and goes, "Look, I understand that there's evil in the world. I understand that there's risks out there. I don't know that I have it in me to pull out a gun and shoot someone in the face." That's cool. Like, I'm glad you understand that about yourself, and you probably shouldn't be carrying a gun around, right? Like that. It is what it is.
Better to understand it now than then.
Yes. So
there's some very egotistical alpha males who think they can carry a gun, and are absolutely willing to shoot someone in the face and can't hit shit, and they probably shouldn't be carrying it. So.
Yeah, everyone has to make that decision for themselves. Don't try to force someone to carry a gun that doesn't want to. As great as I think that the decision to carry is, and I'm just saying encourage that. It's got to be up to the individual. So cool. I think that's the best we got. I don't know how helpful that was for the folks that asked that question, but I think that's what we got. All right, fellas. I think that's been. It's been a good episode. I'm interested to see the feedback and see if we stir up any IG firestorms over this one. Should be a good time. But hope you folks enjoyed it. If you got any questions, let us know. As always, I'm Billy with SpecTrain. I got Nick with Velox Training Group and Brennan with Vortex Edge with me on the podcast. Their information is down below. Look these guys up, follow them, train with these guys. Get better, get training, all that kind of good stuff. And we'll see you on the next episode.